what General Jack Keane thinks of all of this, kind enough to join us. General, a conservative government coming in, very conservative government, almost back to the days of Mussolini, but one that recognizes the good fight in Ukraine is worth continuing to support Ukraine. What do you make of this?
Well, I certainly agree with continuing to support Ukraine. I mean, we have an historic event taking place in Europe, a major war inside of Europe with the future security framework of Europe at stake here. So, yes, I think all the European governments should be supporting Ukraine. It's in their national interest to do so. And some of them are reluctant players, as you well know, Neil.
Yeah, you were talking about, and you were on this before anyone was, General, there's a general view that some of the old Eastern European countries, they're very eager to help Ukraine, continue helping Ukraine. Some of the established powers, Germany, to a lesser degree France, not so much, or not so eagerly. What do we make of that?
Well, right from the beginning, Germany and France, they wanted a peace agreement. They wanted to stop the war, go to negotiations, which clearly was not in the national interests of Ukraine. President Zelensky stood from the outset, that he's not going to accept the fact that the Russians not only controlled territory prior to the invasion, but expanded their control of territory, and he wants it back. And he's fighting what seems to be a very capable, competent war to get it back. And the fact is, France and Germany have been reluctant here to really go all in. Meanwhile, the former Soviet republics are pretty much all in. Why? Because they understand communism. They lived under it for decades, and they don't want any part of it. They see, quite frankly, I spoke to the director of the Polish National Security Bureau who came to see me, kind of the equivalent of Jake Sullivan, and he told me, he says, General, he says, we're giving the Ukrainians tanks and fighting vehicles from our operational units. In other words, we don't have that capability anymore in some of our units. And the reason we're doing that is we're now fighting the war we thought we would fight against the Russians. But the Ukrainians are doing it for us. I don't have Polish soldiers there, so I'm going to give them as much equipment as I possibly can and accept the risk associated with it. We want the Russian army defeated in Ukraine. And I think that is absolutely the right attitude.
You know, General, this demand on the part of Vladimir Putin to call up 300,000 reservists on top of 137,000 soldiers prior to that, and all of these reservists being called up who are heading to the border, it's almost like they're Vietnam right now, where a lot are saying, no, we're not going to do this. And the protests that are popping up all over Russia, is Putin losing support back home?
Well, he's losing the war, and he's taking some political risk here, certainly. He knew from the outset that if he wasn't able to achieve his initial objective, topple the government in Kyiv, that he, over time, the amount of people he had committed to the war is an imbalance against the Ukrainians, and the numbers speak for themselves. He committed somewhere in the neighborhood of 180,000 to 200,000 to prosecute this war. He's brought other people in as he's taken casualties, to be sure, but that's about where they started. Well, the Ukrainians are north of 700,000, and the fact is Putin took 25,000 killed, estimated, and 65,000 wounded, estimated. That is staggering out of a force of 180 to 200,000. So there's a huge personnel imbalance here, and he's trying to correct it. He's got equipment. The Ukrainians don't. The Ukrainians got to go get equipment from others. Putin's got plenty of stockpile equipment that he can give his people, but he's got to get more people in there. But look, I think what's going to show up, physically unfit, medically unfit, psychologically and emotionally not wanting any part of this war. In other words, a very low will to fight, pretty much what is going on right now with the force he has committed. But we can't be dismissive of another 300,000 or even greater, I think is what they're doing, because they're forcing conscription. We can't just dismiss that out of hand, because quantity has a quality all of its own. And there's a lot of tasks he can give these additional soldiers to do that now combat experienced soldiers are doing, so they can free them up. We at the Institute for the Study of War look at this, and we don't believe this additional force will be decisive in terms of Putin being able to achieve a victory here, but likely they're going to have some positive impact.
All right, General. Thank you very much. A lot to sort of digest there and just see where Vladimir Putin goes from here, because he is running into a buzzsaw of criticism